Sometimes life hands you a moment that doesn't just make you pause, it makes you stop. It makes you sit with yourself in a kind of silence you can feel in your bones. The kind of silence where truths you've been avoiding start knocking on the door of your heart. I had one of those moments the day I learned something about Jesus. Something I had never heard before, never imagined, never even considered. And it didn't come from a Bible study or a Sunday sermon. It didn't come from a friend or a teacher or anything I grew up with. It came from Islam, a faith I thought I understood from a distance, a faith I assumed I had figured out until the day it humbled me. It started with one sentence spoken so casually it almost slipped past me. Did you know Jesus is coming back in Islam? And I just froze because that didn't line up with the picture I had in my mind. It didn't match the headlines, the stereotypes, the noise. It didn't match the version of Islam the world shows you, the version built on fear instead of facts. So I sat there with that sentence echoing in the back of my mind, and a question followed it, one that stayed with me, tugging at my curiosity. What else don't I know? That question haunted me a little. It followed me through my day, slipped into my thoughts when things got quiet. What else had I misunderstood? What else had I been too busy, too distracted, or too proud to learn? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how many doors I had closed without ever checking what was behind them. So I made a choice, a simple one. I decided to learn, not to debate, not to prove anything, but to understand. And when I opened that door, it felt like walking into a room full of light. I started reading, listening, researching. I watched scholars explain things with a calmness and clarity I wasn't expecting. And piece by piece, a picture began forming. In Islam, Jesus, Isa, isn't some side note. He isn't dismissed, downgraded, or made small. He's honored, revered, respected, a prophet of truth, a man of miracles, a servant who carried the message of God with purity and purpose. And then came the realization that shook something inside me. Muslims believe Jesus will return, not as a symbol, not as a metaphor, not as a myth or a poetic idea, but for real, with purpose, with justice, with mercy, with truth. And the more I read, the more I felt this quiet weight settle in my chest, the kind of weight that doesn't burden you but grounds you, the kind that makes you whisper to yourself, I didn't know, I really didn't know. But it wasn't just the belief in his return. It was why he returns. In Islam, Jesus doesn't come back to bring a new message. He comes back to complete the same truth he brought before, the same truth all prophets came with, a truth humanity has been wrestling with since the beginning of time, a truth we hear, then forget, then hear again, then lose in the noise of our own egos. When I read that, something quietly shifted inside me. Like a room in my heart I didn't know existed suddenly lit up, and I started thinking about my own life, my own moments of pride, my own stubbornness, my own times of insisting I already knew everything. How many times had I walked past wisdom because it came from a direction I wasn't expecting? How many times had I ignored truth because I didn't recognize the voice that carried it? This world teaches us to divide ourselves into teams. It teaches us to guard our corners, defend our labels, distrust faiths we didn't grow up with. It teaches us to rank ourselves, to decide who's us and who's them, who's right and who's wrong, who belongs and who doesn't. But when I studied what Islam says about Jesus, I realized something simple, ancient, powerful. God's message has never belonged to one tribe. Prophets aren't competitors. They're brothers carrying the same flame through different lands across different centuries. And when I learned that Jesus returning wasn't just a Christian hope, but a belief held by over 1 billion Muslims, my heart softened. Walls quietly fell, old assumptions cracked, and a strange sense of unity settled over me, a realization that the story of Jesus is bigger than any one nation, any one language, any one interpretation. His story stretches across humanity. His legacy touches every continent. His return is a reminder that truth doesn't belong to us. We belong to it. And the more I thought about this, the more I saw the world around me differently. We live in a time where people are exhausted by conflict, by chaos, by constant noise. Everyone talks about peace, but very few practice it. Everyone claims truth, but very few live it. And here comes this teaching from Islam, reminding me that when Jesus returns, he returns as a peacemaker, a just judge, a breaker of illusions, a restorer of truth. And I couldn't help but look at my own life. the mistakes I've made, the people I've hurt, the apologies I owed but never gave, the apologies I needed but never asked for. I started seeing something deeper. Maybe the return of Jesus isn't just a prophecy about the future. Maybe it's also a lesson for right now, a reminder that every one of us needs a return to sincerity, a return to discipline, a return to humility, a return to God. Maybe his return is a symbol of what happens inside you when you let truth walk back into your life, when you stop running, when you stop pretending, when you let your heart soften enough to be corrected. I wrote down 3 lines that day. They weren't from a book. They weren't from a scholar. They just came to me quietly, like they had been waiting in the corner of my mind. Truth doesn't return to punish you. It returns to wake you. Peace doesn't fall from the sky. It grows where ego dies. God's promise is bigger than our confusion. Those lines stayed with me. They became reminders, soft whispers that shaped the way I saw the world. And suddenly I noticed how universal this idea is. Everyone wants justice. Everyone wants mercy. Everyone wants clarity. Everyone wants to feel anchored, protected, guided. And here was Islam telling me that Jesus, someone I've always held with deep respect, will one day come back to bring exactly that. And something about that filled me with peace. Not the kind of peace that makes everything easy, but the kind that makes everything make sense. The kind of peace that humbles you. The kind that reminds you that God's wisdom is bigger than your upbringing, your assumptions, your limited understanding. The truth is, learning this didn't pull me away from my own faith. It expanded it. It gave it dimension, depth, context. It reminded me that God has been guiding humanity long before my lifetime and will continue long after. That his truth reaches across continents and cultures. That revelation didn't stop at any border. And that Jesus, honored, beloved, awaited, is not the property of any one people. And now, when I close my eyes at night and let the world quiet down, I feel this gentle understanding settle into my heart. Jesus returning in Islam isn't a threat. It's a bridge between faiths, a bridge between histories, a bridge between hearts, a reminder that we have more in common than we think, a reminder that the God who sent one prophet sent them all, different faces, different languages, same light. The more I learn, the more grateful I become. Grateful that I was humbled enough to ask questions. Grateful that I didn't let stereotypes become my truth. Grateful that I discovered something beautiful where the world told me there was only distance. And grateful that God keeps sending his light again and again, even when we forget to look for it. And the deeper I reflect, the more one final truth settles on my heart, like a soft whisper at the end of a long day. When God sends light, it doesn't matter which window it enters through. It was always meant for you. And that thought, that truth, leaves me in a silence filled with peace.